Get the recording started. 1, 2, T toast. Perfect. Okay. Hello, everybody. So, as you three know, there's been a lot of discussions about trying to do the more advanced theories of Elsha and just in general how to play Magic on a bigger than baseline theory. Now, as you see in my screen share, I've actually written down 10 different lines of ideas that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to start with the first two lines right here that are more Elsha specific, because I feel like it's a great place for us to start, and for a great place for us to just start getting into that mindset of, instead of being, the basic lines and the basic way of thinking, like you have a solid foundation, but now I want to make you guys start thinking about how to basically increase that baseline thinking and start reaching into those more niche scenarios, into those more really interesting spaces, and as well as talk about a lot of theory about places that aren't really talked about and sometimes are more assumed, or let's also be honest, more advanced players don't like talking about because even they don't really know how to put it in words, which I can't really say anything against it. It's taken me a couple months to understand how to write in words, so whatever. But yeah, does anyone have any initial questions before I start yapping like my life depends on it? All right. That sounds like a no. So let me get that set up. So the biggest thing that I want to start off is, since everyone knows we're here for Elsha, that is what I want to start the main focus to be today. As you all know, I'm assuming a lot of you have played a decent amount of Elsha. You guys already know the baselines of how Elsha should work. You know of the breach line. You know of our Underworld breach line that every single deck uses that has access to blue and red. Underworld breach line, Diamond, Brain Freeze, standard stuff. You also know about the Elsha, the Infinite plus Sensei's Dividing Top plus Reducer line. Pretty simple stuff. And it's only just been added recently, but for those of you who've played other things, you also know about the Fairy Mastermind plus Double Smothering Tide line as well. So what I'm going to get into today is I'm going to talk about the different ways to win, like the more niche ways to win that do exist inside this deck, that can also be used, but are sometimes a little bit less, how do you say this? Less obvious, if that makes sense. So let's start with Underworld Breach. So, as you all know, we have Underworld Breach, Lion's Eye Diamond, and Brain Freeze. Obviously, the main thing. There are a lot of different ways to replace two of these three cards. Of course, Underworld Breach always has to stay. This is the singular card in this line that is kind of impossible to replace because of how unique the card is. However, the way the combo works is you need a card that keeps milling cards and a card that keeps generating mana, and just as a generic mindset right there. So if we kind of blow that mindset back out, that actually is what allows us to also have Jeska's Will and Wheel of Fortune in these locations as well. This discards your hand, thus a form of milling. This makes mana and also a form of mana generation. I also discussed this during my other Intro to Elsha line. These were the two unique lines. Now, one thing to note about the Wheel of Fortune line is that you can actually replace Jeska's Will with Lion's Eye Diamond, and it is also another way to win with Underworld Breach. Now, it does not generate mana like Jeska's Will because it makes you an additional singular red for every time you run through the loop, but it will at least get you through your deck faster, and it will still generate you the singular extra card. It will not go more than one extra card per loop, unlike Brain Freeze, but it still allows you to dig through your deck enough so that way you can find your Brain Freeze or a different combo to win instead. Now we get to the more fun options. There are two cards that I want to discuss about with Underworld Breach that kind of allow you to have a lot more insane kind of playability. And both of these cards, actually, sorry, let me preface this. They both work with Brain Freeze, but only one of them also works with Wheel of Fortune. However, with Brain Freeze, this allows you to have an instant speed Underworld Breach loop innately. Well, you have to get Brain Freeze on the Underworld Breach on the field, obviously. But like aside from that, we have two instants that allow you to do an instant speed win. Now, the more obvious one is Dramatic Reversal. Dramatic Reversal, obviously, reads 1 and a blue, instant, untap all non-land permanents you control. And you can kind of see where this is going. As long as you have enough mana rocks that to allow you to make at least 2 colorless and 2 blue mana, enough to cast Brain Freeze and Dramatic Reversal, you have everything you need. Because, well, you have this. Oh, there it is. Open mana. Tap all 4. 2 blue, 2 colorless. You then obviously cast Dramatic Reversal, untap, 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 and then escape Brain Freeze. You're now at net 0, and you've milled at least 6 cards from just these two. And that gives you exactly 6 cards to start recasting everything once again. Pretty simple. Now, this is more reliant. It isn't like a net 0, like you only need these 3 cards to win. It does require mana rocks in order for this to happen. However, the benefit of this is that since Elsha is already innately casting these mana rocks in order to jump ahead, that requirement is a lot less restrictive, if that's the correct word. Because if we're already shoving mana rocks onto the field in order to get our mana out ahead of us, we should already be drastically increasing our chances to win with the Dramatic Reversal Brain Freeze loop. And then, since we're going with Advanced Theory, I'm going to talk about every single, not every single, but as many side channels to this as possible. And I mean by that is you can actually make this even more efficient by having a Helm of Awakening or a Burgi. Or heck, any of the reducers. Because both of these turn your 1 and a blue and 1 and a blue into just a singular blue. So these 2 cards actually allow you to only need double blue generated from your Dramatic Reversal, instead of 2 and a blue, which is massive. This can also be said with Displacer Kitten. Now, obviously, for Displacer Kitten, you still need a 3rd rock, because you still need your double blue, but your 3rd rock can just... It can be a 3rd rock to generate just 1 additional mana of any kind. Like, it can just be a talisman. So instead, you can have 3 mana, but if you have Displacer Kitten, you can still cast Dramatic Reversal using this, have Kitten flicker, target one of these, flicker it, tap it, now you have an extra mana, untap, and now you always will have enough mana to do it every single time. Because this technically requires 1, but it's a weird format because you tap 2 to cast Brain Freeze. This flickers it up right here. Then you have to cast these 2, and this flickers that, so you actually generate an extra blue, and then you untap everything. It's a minimum of 3 mana basically generated, 1 and 2 blue, and that's how you can gain positive from that. And then Burgies and Helm is the same thing, and actually, Artist Talent is also the exact same thing. All of these allow you to have a more efficient Brain Freeze reversal loop. Now, that is the more obvious way to win as an alternative combo. And it's already a lot. The other line is through a card that you also saw me actually sneakily putting into the list. Because I don't run it personally, but it is still powerful. You generate enough mana through an offer you can't refuse in order to win. Now, this is a little bit weird, because... hold on, I just realized I've never been opening chat yet. I am so sorry. Where are you at? Okay. Good. Yeah, so an offer you can't refuse is also another way to generate the mana, because as it reads, when you counter a non-creature spell, its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. In this loop, we will be countering our own brain freezes. And we need to counter at least 2 brain freezes in order to go neutral. Now, the way I say that is because, as you all remember, brain freeze has storm. And the more storm you create, the more it goes. I'm probably going to muck this up a little bit. I do have the entire line right here if you want to read it in my primer. But the way it works is cast Underworld Breach, and then you want to have a storm of 4. To that. Yes, you want to have a storm of 4. You want to have a storm of 3 before you cast Brain Freeze. And then once you cast Brain Freeze, let me just put all these other cards away. So when you cast Storm of 4, so when you cast Brain Freeze, you make 4 copies. And then the way you want is you want to use 1 blue to counter one of the Brain Freezes. This gets countered, and you create 2 treasure tokens. This goes into the graveyard. Then what you want to do is you want to let 1 copy of Brain Freeze resolve. Go back to the graveyard. And then you want to use one of those treasures to escape an offer you can't refuse targeting the next copy of Brain Freeze. This will allow you to make 2 more treasures. And then let the last Brain Freeze resolve. Then, so now we are out. So we started at a storm of 4. Actually, hold on. I can make a better token for this. Foretell. So we have a storm of 4. And then, because we cast an offer you can't refuse twice, we are now at a storm of 6. So now, we then escape Brain Freeze again. We now have 7 copies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we do the exact same thing. We use a mana. We let 1 copy of Brain Freeze resolve. Then we use 1 mana to escape an offer you can't refuse. Counter 1 copy. And then we create 2 treasures. Goes back to the graveyard. Then we let 1 copy resolve. Actually, we can basically let 3 or 4. We can let all but 1 copy resolve, essentially. So that means we mill 15. 1, 2, 3. And then we use 1 more mana, and then escape an offer on the final copy again, making 2 more mana. And now we are at 9 storm. Is this all making sense to everybody? All right, I'll take silence as a yes. By the way, I am monitoring both voice chats, text chats, so you can respond there if you need. But as you can see now, we basically have enough mana to be able to escape Brain Freeze, and now we're going to be generating 30 cards. And we only need to counter 2 copies of Brain Freeze with an offer you can't refuse. Now, to note, this is a problematic part. Or not problematic. There is a slight problem with this because we have to cast 2 offers for every Brain Freeze, which means we are consuming 9 cards for every rotation. So it's not that. So like we are actually using quite a bit of resources in order to do this. However, it is instant speed, so it does have that benefit. And since that does that, it allows us to go through around 8 or 9 rotations or cycles before we completely deck ourselves. But at that point, we should also be able to, an offer you can't refuse, an additional time or 2 to be able to actually start milling our opponents as well. And then as long as we keep doing that, we should have more than enough, because in those 10 rotations, every single additional rotation, because we're starting at 4 with the first rotation, then adding 3 per each. So if I just do some quick calculator math, so we're starting at 4, and then so first rotation is 4, and then plus 3, plus 3, plus 3, plus 3. So we're already at, on the 4th cycle, we're already at a storm of 16. 16 by 3 is 18, 48 cards. So by the 4th rotation, we've already mailed ourselves. So starting with the 5th rotation, of additional plus 3, that's 19. 19, 9, 80, 27, 27, that's 57 cards. So, which means we have 57, and then 57 plus 9, 66. So 57 plus, okay, so 57 plus 66 plus 75 plus 75 plus 84. And then an additional 1. So 1, 2, 3. So that means we only need 4 more rotations to do that, which means an additional 9 cards. Either way, going down to the very nitty-gritty details, I'm sorry, I did not set this part up. But you have enough cards in your deck to instant speed, offer you can't refuse, and brain freeze just by itself to mill everybody. Now, you will be very low in cards, and since you don't have an instant speed way right now, like innately, to deck everybody, the best way you could possibly do it would be to escape Fairy Mastermind, and then have an additional 4 cards, 4 mana, in order to just instantly make everybody draw, hopefully keeping you with 1 or 2 cards in your library, and then kill everybody. So that's the second way to basically instantly win the game with Underworld Breach. Like you said, though, remember, the best way that we can instantly win with Underworld Breach is off the top of the deck with Elsha. Then we can do the Brain Freeze, Offer You Can't Refuse, or Brain Freeze Dramatic Reversal lines. Now, those are the two alternate lines that we have kind of found with Breach. Are there any questions about any of these lines? All right, I don't hear anything. So, next, we're just going to move on to some more silly stuff. In regards to Sensei's Top, because in a lot of the times I have talked about the generic Sensei's Top lines, right? You always need a reducer, Bergie, and displacer kitten, and all right. So, as I've always talked about, we have Elsha in the Infinite, or we have Harnfell. Oop, that's not Harnfell. And then we have Sensei's Divining Top, and then we have any kind of reducer. I've never really put a focus on this next line because it's a little bit more kind of abstract, but we do actually have a third line in these cards that we used to talk about a lot a couple of years ago, but we haven't really talked about recently. And that would actually require neither Harnfell nor Elsha. It actually requires the One Ring. I believe it is just the One Ring. Essentially, all it is you need to have Sensei's Divining Top, Displacer Kitten, Bergie, Sensei's Divining Top, Displacer Kitten, a reducer, and the One Ring. Pretty simple stuff. And the way it works, you actually have Kitten plus the One Ring acting as your stand-in for Elsha. And the rest is quite simple. You activate Sensei's Top, you draw it, put this on top of library, you draw Sensei's Top with the One Ring, and then with Howl of Awakening or any reducer out, you then cast it for free, Displacer Kitten triggers, you flicker the One Ring, and now you're back at square one with an extra card in your hand. Now, there's not too many times that this combo will be present, but there are times where you have this, or you have this, or you have this. This also allows you to do it, though this is more of a manual storm as well. It's kind of like they become the Elsha engine, where it's 1 mana draw a card. Same kind of thing, except it requires an additional trigger on Displacer Kitten, so it can be interacted with a little bit more. And like usual, anytime you have an Elsha engine, Bergy just makes it go even more stupid because you start generating mana. Any other questions about that stuff? No? Okay. So the next I'm actually going to go into is actually the reduction benefits and the specific costs for both Breach and Sensei's top lines. And the different ways that our reducers actually go into playing into the cost analysis of every single line. Because funny enough, all the reducers that we actually put into this deck to actually reduce Sensei's divining top lines also have just a net positive mana impact on every other line that we try to play with. Now this also includes the Teferi Time Raveler lines. And I believe that's all the lines that I can talk about. Yes. So, as I've kind of noted a little bit before, with the Underworld Breach lines, every time we reduce the cost, the floor goes down for the cost. And there are actually some cheeky ways for us to actually make some reductions too. As you all know, Sensei's Divining Top allows us, with a reducer, allows us to do some cheeky things, and you all have probably realized that if you add a Bergy or a Displacer Kitten along with Sensei's Divining Top or Artist Talent, it allows you to do some quite a good amount of mana production, and actually allows you to have more mana for protecting while you are mid-combo, if for some reason some deck has decided to interact in the middle of your combo. Now, I did hear someone unmute. Did anyone do you have a question? All right, fair enough. When we put that into action with these reducers, it allows us to also have, like I said, a lower cost floor. So with the Displacer Kitten and Teferi Time Raveler lines, everyone knows that you need to have a mana neutral or mana positive rock, such as Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, and Soul Ring, and all the sorts. However, I'm actually going to look at the list so that way I can show you guys on a easy basis. When you have a reducer such as a Helm of Awakening, it also allows you to unlock Vexing Bauble, Sensei's Top, Manifold Key, Mana Vault, and Codex Shredder, or any other one drop. And the more reducers you have, the easier it gets. I have had a game where I had Displacer Kitten and a Mana Vault out, and Displacer Kitten and a Mana Vault out, and someone had a Vexing Bauble when I also had a Helm of Awakening. There was, and the easiest way I could do was I was able to just start looping Talisman of Progress, which was really, really nice. Because Talisman of Progress, when you have Helm of Awakening and the Displacer Kitten Teferi combo, keeps it down to 1 mana, but the 1 mana pays for itself off of the Talisman itself, and allows you to be able to get through Vexing Bauble in that way as well. Yes, it does require another way to go, but since it's already innately a focus in our deck, pretty simple to do. And that's also where we get back to the Underworld Breach lines. For Brain Freeze, Lion's Eye Diamond, Underworld Breach, every time you produce mana with Lion's Eye Diamond, you get to pay for 1.5 Brain Freezes. That essentially means that you are escaping 3 Brain Freezes for every 2 Lion's Eye Diamonds. That is 5 cards cast, which means that is 15 cards exiled for every full loop and usage of mana from Lion's Eye Diamond. 1 Helm of Awakening allows it to turn in from instead of a 3 to 2, it turns into a 3 for 1. Because since Brain Freeze only requires 1 blue instead of 1 and a blue, it allows Lion's Eye Diamond to become perfect, which means you don't need to cast a second Lion's Eye Diamond, and it actually saves you 3 cards per rotation in your graveyard, and allows you to have more fuel after you've milled as many cards as you need to be able to keep Brain Freezing your opponents as well as have extra cards to actually escape Lion's Eye Diamond an extra time or two in order to have more mana up for other things, such as interaction or any kind of thing of that sort. It's small, it's like a small micro improvement that when you are fighting can have very, very drastic improvements in the way you played it. Now, this kind of stuff can also be used in like a Vivi deck, because I know Vivi uses Artist's Talent as well. Just anything that uses Bergie Bergie as well. Anything that uses these kinds of effects can make use of this kind of thought process. I know Blue Farm uses Bergie, so this could also be in that kind of way, where they are actually saving mana, and they don't have to use every single blue just to pay for a colorless mana. And it allows them to be more efficient with their mana lines. Now, I know this card has also gotten a lot less popular, but Polywog Prodigy is also one of our best reducers, ironically. I think everyone already knows where I'm going. Smothering Tithe. So Polywog Prodigy says if an opponent would cast a non-creature spell with CMC less than Polywog Prodigy's power, you draw a card. Now, please note, it is a forced card draw. And when we have Smothering Tithe on the board, that essentially becomes its own reducer, and constant reduction with a Sensei's Top is an immediate win. It is quite nice. Any questions about anything so far?
I'm here. I'm just typing in voice chat to keep quiet.
Fair. All right. Bergie is also used proactively to win a fight. I think you said that. Yeah. It is also used proactively to win a fight. You are very correct about that. It allows you to always have more mana open. And just every reduction is just really important. Now, I've basically said everything I had written down for these first two lines. So, I'm now going to leave it to you guys. These two lines have now basically been talked about. I want one of y'all to choose. What else should we talk about? One of these lines right here. Or if you have something that's not on the list, please ask. This is now supposed to be a discussion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah. So like knowing line is one thing, but I have been playing so much that I think improvise on what you have to get to the line is very useful. So I don't know if you have like is that well, you didn't say it, but the way that if you get Elsha out with reach, line side and top, you don't need brain freeze that also combos. It's something that people who might be thinking, I'm missing brain freeze. How do I find it? You know. So that actually already combos. So yeah, if you just remove it. So basically, you just use the 3 on line side, draw 3, guard them, and that fuels your line side again. So that is combo already. So there's like people might say, yeah, I need to find my brain freeze. You actually already have the combo there. So I think that you have to see from there. And then this one is kind of obvious. So I had a one like I don't know how it just clicked. So and then I give it a little bit of thought later. It's like if you have a mystical tutor, DRC, and either breach or Veins Reclamation, you need quite a bit graveyard, but I think you can win from there. Maybe a
Oh, you're talking about the mystical tutor lines, the mystical tutor combo.
Sort of, yeah. It's like you don't like. Obviously, I'm coming from a more like mana train ways of getting there.
Okay.
Obviously, you just get like intuition, whatever, but that kind of requires quite a bit of mana.
All right, can you go through that line real quick so that everyone can hear it out?
You need a DRC though. So like what it allows you. So underworld breach can be swapped out for surveying. Basically, you just trying to survey every single time you kill any non-creature, and like instead you're trying to do this instead to mystical tutor for lightning tutor to like surveil and lightning tutor for like lion's eye if you have underworld breach, or you mystical tutor for surveying and draw it, and then oh no, I think you go for lightning tutor and sorry, I forgot. Like I should have thought about it before I speak, but I think there's a combination. That's say that you breach and then mystical tutor. So you just go in lightning tutor and find your line side, play your breach, like surveil every single time. Trying to go a little faster so you can drop surveying right now.
Okay, so this is just interesting things to have in hand, right? Or
Yeah,
is this
it's
an
like
intuition pile?
yeah, it's kind of in like build your own intuition pile with
Okay,
very
so you have
like
Darcy out.
sometimes you have mana. Sometimes you have graveyard, but you don't have mana.
Mhm.
So this is a time you can go for. Like with
I
I think this will
see.
require like 4 mana or something because you do mystical tutor at step.
Okay. So you mystical tutor
yeah.
at end step. You would get yourself your Savines, and you draw your Savine.
You get enlightening tutor.
Okay.
So
Oh, I
you
see. I
can
see what you're
drop-
doing. I see what you're doing. So you're doing the mystical tutor line with
And
Elsha, but you were also having.
You don't get Elsha at all.
Oh, you don't have Elsha at all.
I'm saying
Okay.
that like it's from like I literally went with single DRC with 5 mana.
Oh, okay. This is actually something I need to note down. All right, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have Darcy. You mystical tutor for enlightened tutor. You just mill a random card.
Yeah, and then you draw enlightening tutor.
Then you draw enlightened tutor, cast enlightened tutor, just toss a card in the graveyard.
Yeah, and then you look for side. So you don't need something here. You can dump it. You don't need something here. Like I think a different line, like one of the card can swap out for some and then will still work, but right now.
So you get Lion's Eye.
Yeah, and cast breach to mill the lion's eye.
Okay.
And then you can cast bring mystical again.
Because that would give you 1, 2, 3.
Milling a card.
Sorry,
assuming you
have mystical tutor. Yeah, okay. So in order to so this requires 2 additional cards in your graveyard. Just 2.
No, I think more than that because you need a cast.
Oh, 5.
Side, your brain freeze and then do it again. So if you have like 5 cards in hand, yeah, it works.
Brain freeze. Brain freeze in your graveyard. So mystical tutor, and then nope, that's library. Check you all. Then you cast Lion's Eye Diamond. You can ignore that, ignore that.
Yeah, you got a combo, yeah, and then you mill your brain freeze. So you need
1, 2, 3, and then you mill your brain freeze. So yeah, you need 3 cards.
3 more cards from your graveyard combined.
Yeah, okay. So you wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, hold on. I'm now going to do them because this is actually needs to be noted. That and then okay. So you need a singular red, and then you need mystical tutor. Where did I put the mystical tutor? There we go.
Then actually has
to this mystical tutor.
Yeah.
Hold on. Sorry. Mystical tutor. So you get the 1. Mystical tutor gets enlightened tutor. Then during you mill whatever the hell you want. Then you enlighten tutor to get LED. You need to have Underworld Breach in your hand already, so that is definitely something to note. You then enlighten tutor for LED. Doesn't matter. Then you need an additional 2 to cast Underworld Breach, milling LED. Then you have to have an additional mana or escape LED to get mystical tutor to get brain freeze. I see. Okay. So that would require an additional. Okay, so this one would then create 1, 2, 3 cards. You would then use those 3 cards to escape Lion's Eye Diamond, and then you would escape Mystical Tutor 1 more time. So you need 3 of those. No, down to 2 because of this, and then you would then have brain freeze. Then you would need to escape Lion's Eye Diamonds to mill brain freeze, So you need 6 cards in your graveyard. Okay, so this is the full cost that you would need. So you would need 1 colorless, 2 red, 1 blue, 1 white, and 6 cards in your graveyard. And you cannot trade that. You would need to have, you can't like have 6 cards in your hand, like 3 cards in your hand, 3 cards in your graveyard. You need to have all 6 cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, they're quite a bit graveyard. But
Actually,
it's mana efficient. It's I don't think you can.
Actually, no. You need 4 cards in your graveyard and 2 cards in hand. Because because you'd be casting Lion's Diadem in the last one, and then you'd be milling Brain Freeze. So you'd actually need 3 cards in your so you'd actually need 3 cards in your hand or graveyard. That is quite mana efficient, and it trades 1 mana for every 3 cards. So it is a useful thing. I actually like that. I'm going to need to note that down in my other section.
Yeah, it's not like particularly very useful. Like it's just like it's something that this is a direction rather than like the line you want to go for. It's direction. You have to think what can get you there most efficiently. So this is the example. And then I think I remember like if you don't have Breach, but you have both Enlightened Tutor and Missile Tutor and Sting instead, then I think that works because you can just mill your Breach and then Sylvia back. I think that's more obvious line. Well, less obvious line. I'm sorry, because when you don't Breach, you have all the suitor. You usually don't know what to do, right? But let's say that you don't like once you have a Breach, usually you can somehow figure out something, maybe. But without Breach, so you have the 2 tutors and the Sylving. I think it also works, but it costs a little more mana.
Yeah,
Sylving is more expensive. Yeah, but it's the same idea.
These are, you can actually do some, like you said, there's actually multiple permutations of this type of line.
Yeah, correct. Just bring it as an example.
You always need Dragon's Rage Channeler, always.
Yes.
However, what you could always do is actually, if you trade that for that to that, that into that, let's see. Hold on, sorry, I am thinking right now. You would need. I'm trying to see like how we can do this. If we can just win through these 3 cards. I'm trying to see how much of a graveyard requirement it is right now. Because you need to Enlighten Tutor twice. Okay. So I have this already set up. So you would have this, obviously. You would then Enlightened Tutor for Breach. You would draw Breach on your turn. You would then cast Brain Freeze. Okay, so you then cast Underworld Breach, mill another card, and
probably Missile Tutor first, because you do want to mill the Brain Freeze from the Underworld.
So I'm trying to see how many cards I need because I want Lion's Eye Diamond first. And I'm thinking,
but still, like a little depends on you. If you have mana or have graveyard, because you kind of want to just Missile Tutor first and mill your Brain Freeze, so you don't have to escape Missile Tutor. But not escape. You don't have to.
Oh right, because I have to crack Lion's Eye Diamond. That's true. So you need an additional card. So you need then. So instead of doing that, you would want to. So you would actually want to Mystical Tutor, then Underworld Breach, putting Brain Freeze in your graveyard.
I think it's better.
Then Underworld Breach, and then you would want to then, since Mystical Tutor's fine, that is 1, 2, 3. You have exactly enough to that.
Oh, actually, it doesn't matter.
And
I think your line's fine because you still need to mill the line inside, so you have to cast 1 spell regardless.
Yeah,
so it's like
I need to cast the Lion's Eye Diamond first. That is the first thing I need to do because with the Lion's Eye Diamond, I can do anything else.
Yeah. So I think your original line's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Let me back up. So
it's so not obvious. You have to think through.
Yeah, these are the type of lines that are fun. This is why I wanted to make this a more discussion. By the way, Golden, I know I see your question. I will get to that after this. Okay, don't worry. I still see that. So Dragon's Rage Channeler. You would Enlighten Tutor, mill a card, put Underworld Breach into the top of your deck. then you would draw this. You would then cast Underworld Breach, mill another card. Now you need one more card because you want to escape. So you need an additional card in your graveyard to douche, and douche to flashback Enlightened Tutor, to put Lion's Eye Diamond into your graveyard. Then you would then cast Mystical Tutor, milling this, and then you would put this on top of your library, and then you need an additional card because you don't need anything anymore. That would actually mill that and cast that, and now you need 3 more cards somewhere. Okay, so this is actually a more efficient line. It is more mana intensive though.
Yeah, but if you have 6 mana, you literally just use intuition for you just Mystical Tutor for intuition.
So you have a
like
reds, and then you would
very specific for like 5 mana line, so I don't think it's very useful. But it actually came out, and then the game was like, oh shoot,
red mana, then a white mana, then you cast Underworld Breach, then you cast Mystical Tutor, and then you then you cast Mystical Tutor, yeah, and to mill your LED. Then you push out your LED, you flashback Enlightened Tutor. Oh no, you need... No, right. No, you get Enlightened Tutor, then Mystical Tutor, and then you have everything you need.
How much mana is that?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 mana.
6 mana. Yeah. So, but that isn't that just saying that's like Mystical Tutor?
So
unless you don't have intuition anymore, but
5, 4, 5, you are trading 2 cards for an additional white.
Correct, but it just I'm saying that like you don't have to go through this complicated like if you just Mystical Tutor for intuition, because intuition, as long as it's a graveyard, it's 6 mana, right? That's all you need.
No, you need 3 cards in your graveyards. This allows you to go off with only 2 cards in your graveyard.
2 cards? Oh, okay, I didn't do a math. Yeah, so I think there's like overall more no, but you have a DRC, then it doesn't matter. Like you still,
because you can just Mystical Tutor. No, but the only issue is that with intuition, if you intuition on end step, you cannot win on your turn when you intuition, because you need at least 2 additional mana, and if you're trying to do an early time 3, that would require 5 mana. No, it requires 6 mana on your turn.
Yeah,
and 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, we have 6 mana right here.
Yeah, but I'm saying that my original line only works because you're missing that 1 mana.
Yeah, because you have
much easier.
Fair point.
But 1 mana means 1 turn.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually quite makes sense, because with Mystical Tutor and Mystical Tutor and Dragon's Rage Chandler is an instant win. You just need 3 cards in your graveyard, an additional 3 in hand, and that's 2 cards in your graveyard and 3 in hand. Actually, no, you don't even need that. 2 and 2.
I'm not sure. I didn't do the math.
This is the math. This is the math, because the standard protocol for every intuition or breach line is always 3 additional mana for Savine's Reclamation. Because if you only have 2 mana, they're just going to give you Savine's Rec and you can't cast it and you can't win. So you need 2 and a white on board, and you need at least 3 cards in your graveyard, and then additional 3 cards in between your hand and graveyard. And Dragon's Rage Chandler allows you to skip 2 because Mystical Tutor cast and Intuition cast. So there you go. Dragon's Rage Channel allows you to actually cheat it. It's a turn 1 Darcy, turn 2 Mystical Tutor, and then hopefully you mill like 2 or 3 cards for their mana rocks. And there you go. There's your 6 mana. Wood line.
Yeah, I think DRC it's very good enabler.
Oh yeah, DRC is an incredibly good enabler. All right. Those are some fair stuff.
Yeah, just last thing before we go back to going, just like if anyone has like really cheeky ways, not cheeky, but like you see a weird line, like how you get there, you can share. It's just ways to like improvise the play.
Mm-hmm.
We're manual storm. We're doing stuff a lot of times without knowing if we can win. But if you miss it during the storm turn or whatever you're planning, you miss the win. So being able to see it is so important.
Agreed. So hard agreed. That's why this stuff is here, because these small interactions and these small alternate lines can basically give you the win in the face, but if you don't know what to look for it, I mean, you can't really blame yourself for not knowing what you don't know, but it's still like you cost yourself the game because you didn't know, kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is something to share, so people maybe will it can enlighten them next time they play. I was like, oh, I actually have this line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fully valid. So, does anyone else have anything that they want to talk about before I get into the or like any like small alternate lines like these? Nope. Okay. So, Golden, you actually asked about in the chat. I don't really want to turn on my mic. I'm actually curious about what's the last line whenever you get the time to answer. Now, I'm guessing what you mean by the last line. Did you mean by this line right here, the Fairy Mastermind line? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah? All right. That's a simple one. So the Fairy Mastermind line is a little bit is not complicated, but it's just a little bit mana intensive. So essentially what it is we are essentially, it is a Stormless combo where we use the fourth line of Fairy Mastermind, the line that says 3 in a blue, each player draws a card. And we use that to force everybody. Yeah. Oh, never mind. I get it. Yeah, that's fair. I'm still gonna just play it out so that way everyone else can understand it as well. So essentially the way it works is every time an opponent draws a card, that's where it has Smothering Tithe. Every time an opponent draws a card, you make a treasure. But here's the thing. Every time you activate Fairy Mastermind for 4 mana, you're only getting 3 mana out of Smothering Tithe. So that's where you just copy Smothering Tithe. So now 2 Smothering Tithes, every single opponent makes 2 treasures. So now every time you're sinking in 4 mana, you're getting 6 back. Really, really important. And this this allows you to actually, every time you activate it, you're generating 2 mana and you're drawing a card. And your opponents are also drawing a card, but you are generating more. Now, a fun alternate line, actually, is why I have these 2 cards out. Because as you can see, it's kind of expensive. 4 mana plus additional 3 mana plus additional 2 mana, so 4, 7, that's 9 mana. And then you have to have the initial 4 mana in cost, that's 13 mana to just attempt to win the game. You can reduce that by actually pre-playing things like Imposter Mech. Obviously, Smothering Tithe beforehand. Now, what's greater than a second Smothering Tithe? A Stolen Kinnan. So why not just Imposter Mech a Kinnan? So now all your treasures make 2 mana. And there you go. You get it in the same thing. And now instead of 3 treasures making 3 mana, you have 3 treasures making 6 mana, which means you only need to activate 2 treasures to activate Fairy Mastermind again. Because of this. Now, the fun thing is, a recent addition that we had in this Discord is that not only can we copy a Kinnan with Imposter Mech, we can also just cast Claim the Firstborn on the Kinnan as well, and also get the same exact effect. And with all that, we can then draw our deck, and now comes the fun part, trying to win the game when everybody has their hand in their deck in their hand. And that's where the interesting part comes in. Because now you have to start counting and doing math. If you have the most cards in the game, you just win. If you have the most cards in your deck when you start going off, you will absolutely win. Because your opponents will deck out and draw a card from their empty library before you do. Now, if you happen to have less cards in your graveyard, in your library, than your opponents, well, that's where Brain Freeze comes into play. And hopefully you have a storm of like 3, 4, 5, like not too much, just enough, so that way all your opponents have even 1 card less in their library than you do. That is the important part. Every single card counts. And yeah, that is pretty simplistic on that final line. This also, fun fact, this also gets around the One Ring protection because Fairy Mastermind does not say target, so it actually is another way to win. Can you win with Tormod's Crypt and Time Twister that way? You can. You very much can. Well, actually, no, not really. The main reason is because Fairy Mastermind says draw. Now, the way to get around that is Wheel of Fortune and Time Twister. Because you essentially need to have everyone draw most of their deck, cast a Wheel of Fortune, then exile, and then proceed to exile everyone's graveyard because they discard 70 cards of their deck, then cast a Time Twister, and then proceed to keep going about it. Though you should really only be doing that if things have gone horribly wrong, but it is an option that is there, Golden. Because I would like to still go back to we still have Brain Freeze, and hopefully, if you've played this correctly, normally you should be able to do the Fairy Mastermind combo on top of everybody else, because you've set up the Smothering Tithe, and hopefully there's an Imposter mech around, or you set up your double Smothering Tithe, and you just need to flash in your Fairy Mastermind on top of everybody winning. And by then, there should be like 3, 4, maybe 5 or 6 Storm, and usually that is enough to bring people below your deck, the amount of cards in your deck. However, the way you are speaking is the correct way to go. You can Brain Freeze them, Tormod's Crypt them. You have to Tormod's Crypt each one of them at the same time. And if you want to do this at instant speed, you're going to have to cast a Born Upon a Wind or the Valley Flood Caller, whichever one you currently have. And then you can then free cast Tormod's Crypt, exile one person's graveyard, and then use either Codex Shredder to get it back, or get back Time Twister to get back Codex Shredder again, or cast Underworld Breach to just re-escape it every single time. But at that point, if you're just casting so many spells already, just Brain Freeze them. It does the exact same intended purpose, but you don't have to Time Twister them and then fill their library again. Now, if someone does exile Brain Freeze, yes, that is the correct way that is the best way to go if you have Tormod's Crypt in your list. Personally, I don't. However, we have been experimenting with putting Tormod's Crypt back in, given the amount of turbo decks that are coming out, or that have been kind of showing relevance, and a lot of them use the graveyard. Because Breach has apparently come back in full force as the best combo in the format. So yeah, hopefully I answered your question correctly enough or good enough. I've been really liking Crypt. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So, let's see. Let me go back. So, now we go back to the list. Which of these would you guys like me to yap about next, or just have us talk about next?
Did you mention the Blizzard Kitten and the Tezzeret win line?
Oh, you want me to talk about that as well? Okay, I can do that.
Oh, I don't know if other people know, but I won with that line quite a few times. This is literally 2-card combo. With
It's so fun, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't even need Elsha. You just play one card that protects itself and then drop a Tezzeret and then win.
That's fair. For those of you who do not know, I have actually put the Tezzeret Kitten combo in my primer, and I think I've kind of fleshed it out quite clearly. But would you guys like me to explain it in right here, right now, in detail? Sure. All right, let's do it. Back to the Mux field. All right. So, the Kitten to Fairy line is one of our only true, and I mean true, 2-card combos. Now, I say true 2-card combos because a lot of people, actually, no, what am I doing? Is because a lot of the 2-card combos we have, like Top Combo, isn't really true 2-card. Because Sensei's Top plus Helm of Awakening is a fake 2-card combo because it also requires Elsha, but we always have access to Elsha, so no, not to Fairy. Oh my gosh. This is a true 2-card combo. This, yeah, I meant Tezzeret. Yeah, I meant Tezzeret. Thank you. Displacer Kitten and Tezzeret are both incredibly powerful on their own. But just like as usual, anything that Kitten puts itself into a synergy just absolutely breaks the hell out of it. And funny enough, both Planeswalkers that we run instantly win the game with Displacer Kitten. Now, how Tezzeret works in this is quite simple. You are essentially auto-assembling the Sensei's Divining Top Elsha combo. That's it. That's all you're doing. And you set it up from these two cards. Let me get rid of this. And the best way I can describe this is what you are trying to assemble is at 3 mana of any color, 1 blue, 1 white, and 1 red. And that is it. You're just trying to get that 6 mana. The easiest way to do that is through Tezzeret and his -3. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value 1 or less, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. There are some things that I'm going to talk about, but there are multiple different permutations of this line. But the easiest one that I can explain requires you to have 1 mana. Just a singular mana to start off with. So you're going to -3. You're going to get Mana Vaults. You're going to cast Mana Vault. This is going to Displacer Kitten is going to flicker Tezzeret. Reset. Tezzeret is now a new body. So now you get up -3 again. You're going to get Lotus Petal. Cast. Goes up again because you flicker it, and then you -3 again. Now you get Mox Opal. And then you cast, and then you flicker him again. Now, here's where it gets a little bit interesting, because your final artifacts can be one of a few different things. You can -3 him to get either Lion's Eye Diamonds, you can get Chromox, or Mox Diamond as your other choices. Now, each of them has a cost, unfortunately. Lion's Eye Diamond requires you to discard your hand, so you'll be unprotected. Chromox requires you to exile a colored card in your hand. It doesn't matter what color it has to be, it just has to be one of the 3 colors that we need. So that requires you to have an extra card in your hand in order to exile. And Mox Diamond requires you to have an extra land in hand. And if you don't have lands, obviously don't go for that. But unfortunately, since there's only enough 0s and 1s, these are the best 3 that we can do. Now, a cool thing to note, by the way, is that if you have an extra card in hand and you have an extra land in hand, you can just cast both, and you will now have an extra mana in Lotus Petal for interaction in case they do anything. But let's just go with go with this for now, because this is the most common line that I usually have. And look at that! You can have 3 colorless mana from Mana Vault, and you have 3 colored mana sources. So now after you cast Chromox and you imprint it, you then flicker Tezzeret, and then you minus Tezzeret 1 final time, and you get Sensei's Divining Top into hand. And now what you do, 3 mana, 1, 2, 3, cast Elsha of the Infinite for 5 mana, and then you use the final colorless mana, cast Sensei's Divining Top. Sensei's Divining Top will now trigger Displacer Kitten. Instead of targeting Tezzeret, you flicker Mana Vault. And look at that. You now have a Sensei's Divining Top combo with Displacer Kitten constantly producing 2 additional mana. That 2 additional mana can be used to pay for either 2 Rhystic Studies, or in future turns, you can actually filter that additional colorless mana into colored mana through flickering of Mox Opal. So you have all the colors you need, and you have all the colorless mana generation you need to also pay for Rhystic Studies, all in a singular small 2-card package. Now, it is also very interesting because it is a little bit expensive. It is 7 mana. However, it is not just 7 mana. It is 6 colorless and blue, which means if you get a nutty hand such as Tezzeret, Displacer Kitten, Mana Vault, and a blue land. Well, 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 would you look at that? you just immediately won the game. You can also have just like a random 0 or 1 drop. Actually, you do need like a random other thing as well. Let's go with a Urza Saga. Actually, no, let's go for Mana Confluence. Mana Confluence, there we go. Because you can then proceed to do lands, tap for Mana Vault, cast Tezzeret, and then 0 Tezzeret to untap. And now you can then untap, play your land, 3 that, and then you can then cast Displacer Kitten. And now you have an entire other mana to cast whatever the hell you want. That mana can then be weighted, but you don't need to wait. You can then proceed to do your chain for Mox Opal, Chrome Mox, Lion's Eye Diamonds, and Mox Diamonds. And there's your 6 mana right there. Actually, you can actually do some other things. You could actually, instead of Lion's Eye Diamonds, you could also instead get Soul Ring and use this last one right here. No, remember, that's only 5 mana. Either way, that is not correct. I will take that back. You would still need Lion's Eye Diamond for this, because you always want to get to that magical 6 color. No, never mind. I lied. I'm an idiot. Sorry. You get Soul Ring, and then you would actually get Key, Manifold Key. You would still cast this, flicker Tezzeret, then use the 2nd mana from Soul Ring to do this and untap this, and there's your 6 mana. There it is. I completely forgot about that line. Apologies. But there you go. Just a Mana Vault, Tezzeret, Displacer Kitten, and 2 mana. And that's a turn 2 win right there. Any questions on any of this?
If you are spare mana, you can find Vex and Bauble too.
Oh, yes.
Because that's why you don't care about 0 draw after you play them.
Exactly. Also, I'm going to need to move something over real quick because I did not see chat when Abstract said that chat, and I'm so sorry, Abstract. But yeah, no, this gets around. Unfortunately, you have 3 0 drops, so you don't get around Vexing Bauble. But it is close. But
no, I mean you tutor last.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you can actually before you even tutor Sensei's Divining Top. No, you would need a 7th mana at that point.
Yeah, I say if you have 1 spare mana, then you can.
Yeah, if you have 1 spare mana for Vexing Bubble. Now, here's the fun part about this as well. This is if you have absolutely nothing. This combo gets better and better the more mana you have. I mean, hell, even if you start with just a Mox, even if you start with 3 lands in play, that's just the less mana. The more mana you have, the less mana you need to tutor for Tezzeret. And at one point, you can just have Displacer Kitten and Elsha, and you just cast Tezzeret and just tutor Sensei's Divining Top with Tezzeret. Boom, you win. It's just kind of insane that we have enough 0 and 1 drops to be able to just get all the mana we need for Elsha and Top at the exact same time. So yeah, any questions about this? Perfect. I still would just like to giddily say Elsha finally has a 2-card combo. Holy shit! Yeah! You do not understand how happy I am about this. Isn't Elsha redundant in the combo? Frick! That's what I forgot about. No, Elsha is not redundant. However, that actually just reminded me of a thing I completely forgot to write down. The second Elsha list combo line. Because Displacer Kitten requires you to constantly blink the mana vault to constantly make the mana. That is true. However, if you have another reducer on the field, like Artist Talents, Helm of Awakening, god damn it, I completely forgot about this. Or Bergie, this actually also is considered another Elsha list combo because here, let me just clear the board a little bit. There we go. Because you have these things which generate the mana. You tap top. You put it on top of your. You draw and put it on top of your library. Then you activate Tezzeret. You get Tezzeret into your hand. Shuffle, cast it for free, and then Displacer Kitten automatically resets to Fairy. Tezzeret. Sorry, Tezzeret, not to Fairy. And there you go. There is another Elsha-less combo. So if for some reason someone has a Dranith Magistrate out and you cannot get Elsha, well, there you go. You just basically need Teferi plus Displacer plus Tezzeret plus any reducer, and you just immediately win. Again. And once again, as well, this also gets around Vexing Ball, because you can just have, if you have Bergie out, well, there you go. You're paying your mana for every single time. So there's your second Elsha-less combo as well. Of course, they both require Displacer Kitten to do some absolutely deplorable shenanigans, but still, like, that kind of line is absolutely ridiculous. Displacer.
I never really thought about this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This didn't come. The situation never came up, but like just knowing those like explored my mind, and then I can think deeper and more possibilities.
Mm-hmm. There's so many small different ways to win that are like small, slightly different permutations of the same cards. It's really fun to try to figure out every single one of them. Displacer is reducer too. And this combo, unfortunately, no. The reason Displacer is not a reducer abstract is because Displacer Kit needs to be there to reset Tezzeret or the One Ring to redraw Sensei's top. Unless you were able to get a second Displacer Kitten, then yes, Displacer Kitten also is a reducer. But Displacer Kitten is solely there to flicker the thing that gets Sensei's top back in your hand, so that way you can cast it for free with one of the other 3 reducers. Sorry, drinking water right now. But yeah, that is a good catch. I completely forgot about the about this Elsha-less line as well. Did I even put it in there? Hold on, did I put it in the primer? I did. Combo line number 4: Displacer Kitten plus Sensei's top plus Helm or Bergie or Artist Talent. I'll need to add that. Plus the One Ring or Tezzeret Cruel Captain. There is your Elsha-less top line right there. Actually, while I'm just thinking about it, let me just add that real quick. That's combo line number 4 / level 2 artist talent. Sure, without access to Elsha, once you get all of your rocks, you start digging with the top, and you can use anything from the deck to flicker mana until you hit a reducer. That is, yeah, you can technically do that. But that basically turns again into the standard Elsha 1 mana for draw 1 card kind of thing. Actually, no. You're exactly correct. I didn't even think about that. As long as you're drawing cards that you can actually use that are mana equal or mana positive, like other 0-drop rocks or other reducers to help make all your other mana rocks neutral or positive. Yeah. You can technically manually storm again until you draw your second reducer. Though, to be fair, that now basically, instead of becoming a tight, small combo that doesn't require any additional mana, that does start going into the world of you need more mana, you constantly need to start generating more mana. But this right itself is a closed loop, and yeah, no, you are very correct, though. That is definitely something to note about as well. You do not need the reducers at the beginning. You just need to find them and be able to cast them in order to actually go truly infinite. And that's where Manual Storm comes into play. Yay! Oh gosh, Tezzeret is insane. I know this is probably just me being egotistical or something, but I very much am confident to say that Tezzeret is probably at its most powerful and at its best in Elsha. So it's non-deterministic, but you'll likely be able to dig to get something. That is correct. Yes, that is exactly right. Because also, broken. Yeah, it is broken in Elsha. I would also like to note, by the way, that other people are saying that you can just because this part only has this manual storm only has to be worried about if your Elsha is unable to be cast. Because remember, we have enough 0 and 1 drops to just flat out cast Elsha at 5 and 7 mana because we have an LED as well. So like that is very much something to note. If Elsha is somehow Draneth, you basically just need to keep digging until you get that reducer, and then you go off. Does that all make sense to everybody?
Oh,
All right.
seeing those Tezzeret reminds me of one game, just couple maybe last month. It was really funny. Like I have nothing other than like Smothering Tide, a whole bunch of mana, and then Elsha out, but nothing to play. Absolutely. And then I found a line with Imposter Mech copying CC, and then realized that you just
Oh no.
yeah, because your 3 key combo pieces are all legendary. Your Displacer Kitten, your Tezzeret.
Displacer is not legendary, unfortunately.
Oh, no, Tezzeret and Teferi.
Oh yeah, Tezzeret and Teferi, yeah.
Yeah. So you just get Teferi, and then you get Protected, you get Tezzeret.
Mm-hmm. Gosh. All right. Any other questions? Or would anyone like to pick a line from the lines?
Lemon is not here, but he probably wants the politics. But
Well, yeah, I know. Lemon's probably gonna be listening to this recording back. By the way, I am recording this. I said it at the beginning, and I'm saying it now.
okay.
If no one's gonna make a recommendation, I'm just gonna pick. That's because we did talk about those 3. I'm just gonna go down the list, and let's talk about stacking triggers and how to stack them, because this is another very very annoying thing to deal with in Elsha. All right, let me get all of the triggers. Let's put this back in the command zone.
How do we represent big stack with triggers? Because it's not uncommon when you're storming off, people are interacting, and there's over 50 things on the stack.
Mm-hmm.
Because one spell will trigger maybe 3 things.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. There is a lot. Like, hold on, I'm actually just slowly going through everything right now. There's a lot that we do. And there's also a lot that some people don't run, and some things that people do run. So it's like, actually, hold on. I need to bring a card back, so I'm no longer cards 101. Let's put that back in the considering board. Let's go back to playtests. Oh yeah, that card. Oh god, that card. Thank you. All right. Give me a quick second while I get everything. All right, there we go. So, how many cards is that? 23 cards. Actually, we can bring this down to 22. We have 22 different cards that have their own trigger and their own unique effect in the deck. And I'm going to start sorting them into very specific things because they are very, very important to understand. That goes there, that goes there. Oh, you go there. All right. So, like I said, there are 22 different different cards that have a certain type of trigger. And as you see, I've kind of sorted them into different triggers. On the left, we have personal non-creature triggers. We have ETB triggers. We have opponent. We have personal cast triggers. I'm an idiot. And then we have opponent cast triggers. We have opponent draw triggers. And then we have manual triggers. This equates every single fetch land, just to make life a little bit easier and not have so many cards on the field. This means that almost a quarter of our deck will do something at some point in the game. Now, I know that sounds very obvious, but some of these are a one-time thing, but a vast majority of these times are a repetitious effect. And knowing when they trigger and how they trigger is incredibly important for mastering the stack. So, where do we start? Let's start with the easiest ones. This is all going to go with the assumption that Elsha is on the battlefield, unless I specify otherwise. Because that is going to be at the point when you're going to have to start learning how to trigger things. Now, the easiest things that I can talk about so that way I can get them off the list would be the ETB triggers. Obviously, with Elsha, they allow you to look at more cards than usual. Ranger Captain of Eos's ETB effect, pretty simple. With Elsha, you can look at the top card of your library in response to Ranger Captain of Eos's ETB effect, see if you want to cast a spell. If not, you search your library for a 1-drop, either Esper Sentinel or Dragon's Rage Chandler, which happen to be over in this pile over here, and be able to basically get another creature out of the field. That means one less brick in your library out of your deck. Shuffle, you have a new card in your library or on top of your deck. Incredibly potent. And this is one of the things that I cannot stress enough. With Elsha on the battlefield, every single tutor to hand or battlefield gets exponentially better because Elsha is on the field. It allows you to change the top of your deck, and it allows you to have more looks at more castables. You can actually apply the same effect to Wooded Foothills and the other 8 fetch lands as well. It removes a brick from your library and allows you to look at another card. Pretty simple stuff. And obviously also silence. So we can get those quickly out of the way. Thundering Falls, when combined with a fetch land, is also quite nice, because if you don't like the top card of your library with Wooded Foothills, you can then get Thundering Falls onto the battlefield tapped, and then in response to the Surveil trigger, you can then look at the top card of your library again, see if it's castable and you want to cast it. And if you don't want it, you can Surveil it to the graveyard and look at a third card. And then you would then move to your untap step, draw your card, and now you look at a fourth card. This fun little permutation right here allows you to look 4 cards deeper than you would just at a regular Wooded Foothills, because it only allows you to look at 2 cards. But this gives you 3. Same thing. Very, very nice and fun to note. And you can actually kind of say the same thing with the activated ability of Vexing Bauble. One-time effect. You can sacrifice it to draw a card. Allows you to get rid of the top of your library. Allows you to keep digging. Blah, 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 blah. Now, those are all the one-time effects. Every other one is a two-time effect. Now, I'm going to very, very specifically go in this certain order because I want to start at the, I guess the correct word is the less annoying and the less, like, brain-intensive stuff, if that makes sense to you guys. And the way I'm going to start about this is I'm going to go with the stuff that is easiest to remember, i.e. blind obedience. Extort. You're never going to use extort unless you're actually trying to win, or the board has slowed down to a grind and you need to start slowly draining everybody's life. That extra 3 life in your to your life total and draining every opponent of 1 life is very, very crucial in a slow, grindy game, kind of like how mid-range hell was back last June and like May area. It constantly slowly drains your opponents of life. It makes the black decks worse for their have a worse Adnos, have a worse Necropotence, and every life matters for them. And if no one does anything to you, well, I mean, they can't beat you down because you're getting 3 life per spell. So it kind of becomes a slow victory. Now, that's kind of about the most we need to worry about this card because everything else is more of a static ability. So we can get rid of that. The next effect that we can kind of get rid of and ignore is Bergie's. Bergie's triggered ability whenever you cast a spell at a red. Really doesn't do anything, so we can kind of always let this ability resolve. However, when stacking, I'm not going to put this away. I'm going to put this to the side. But this is always the first ability we want to resolve. More mana is always better, and we don't get punished if this resolves first ever. So I'm going to put this to the side. Now, the next few, I'm going to leave these all to the end because this is where things get a little bit crazy. So let's talk about these as well. Next thing, obvious as well, trigger Tezzeret Cool Captain. The way to manually get Tezzeret's loyalty up is playing more artifacts. And this is just a force trigger. You can't really do anything about it. Basically, once you play an artifact, Tezzeret puts a trigger on the stack, blah, blah, blah. This is actually more of a weakness of Tezzeret, actually. It is both like a strength and a weakness. It is more of a weakness because if you only have Tezzeret at 1 power or 1 loyalty and you play an artifact, someone can respond by, I don't know, gut-shotting Tezzeret before he goes to 2 loyalty. It's a problem, but it's not that big of a problem because why would they kill a Tezzeret when there's more important things to stop on the board? Pretty simple otherwise. Now, these 3 also kind of range in somewhat power. The biggest one that you're never really going to as much mind thinking about is the One Ring. It usually behooves you to hold off on drawing the cards when you have an Elsha on the field. And I personally, when the One Ring is usually at 0, 1, or 2 counters, I actually hold the One Ring as a top deck clearing activated ability. Because at those low counts, that's really the best it's used for. However, when it's on your turn and the One Ring is at 3, 4, or 5 counters, that's when you want to start proactively tapping the One Ring to start drawing the cards. Because during your turn, yes, it clears a top deck for Elsha, but you're drawing so many cards that you cannot also abuse Elsha's ability because in those 5 cards, you probably could have drawn Sensei's top and you would have had the win if you didn't draw those cards off of One Ring. So it becomes like this kind of mental shift that you need to move in between of during the lower times if you have Elsha out, use it as a top deck clearing, and obviously the turn before the end step before your turn, tap to draw the card, then untap with it. And then once you get to the bigger numbers, 3 and onwards, that's when you want to start proactively drawing because the benefit you gain from clearing the top deck is kind of diminished because of how many cards you are drawing. And at that point, you will start becoming a bigger threat, and they will not see the One Ring as just a small little engine. They will actually know the true size of it, and it will be real. And that's where you need to be more proactive with the card draw. Now, Codex Shredder. Some decks don't play this. I personally do, and that's perfectly fine. We are mainly looking at the first ability of Codex Shredder. Target player mills the top card of their library. Pretty simple, right? this is actually a pretty potent piece, because this piece of is our best way to equalize our engines versus black decks. And I say that very specifically because the decks that have a glut of tutors that tutor to the top of their library basically become useless once Codex Shredder is out. Because if someone tutors to the top of their library, well, Codex Shredder, all right, tap, mill the card you just tutored, okay, bye? Question mark? You know? Now, of course, some people can, you know, play into it by tutoring Breach. You know, you force them to mill Breach and they have Savines in their hand, but that's, you know, small corner cases. Most of the time, a Codex Shredder stifles opponents' mystical tutors, enlightened tutors, vampiric tutors, and imperial seals. You know, 2 of those cards being some of the best tutors that people have access to. Heck, vampiric tutor is probably the best tutor in the game right now. And it shuts it down. It makes it completely uncastable. And given how small Codex Shredder is, and like how kind of unneeded, like it doesn't make a big difference on the game aside from just punishing tutors. So it comes to the point of, why would somebody spend a removal spell on Codex Shredder unless they're trying to win the game? It becomes a nice big red flag of like, hey guys, I am trying to bounce Codex Shredder so that way I can try to win the game on my next turn. Well, that's great, but like for other people who don't know they're trying to win the game, why would you bounce such a useless card? So it's really good also for information gathering. If someone is just, you know, 1 Vampiric Tutor away from winning, and they have that extra Chain of Vapor or that Into the Floodmaw in order to stop the combo, you know? So that's the information part. And if no one has a top deck tutor, it's also a great thing to fill our graveyard with. Because during opponent's end step, oh, no one Vampiric tutored before our untap step? All right, mill ourselves a card. It allows us to have a little bit of fuel. The second half is really good during the late game. 5 mana, sack, and return target card from a graveyard to your library. This is a little bit different. And it's actually really good to surprise people with as well. Because it says target card. Not target non-land, not target creature, not target instant, nothing. It just says target card. This is really good where if you are in a very large stack battle, and someone kind of does some, you know, a giant flusterstorm and kills everything, well, you could allow your first counterspell to get countered, pay 5 mana, and then pick it back up and then recast it and stop them again. It's a really good gotcha card. Now, the only issue is, well, 5 mana. It's incredibly expensive. That's why I call it a late game card. Back when you pass like turn 5 around, when you have enough mana to be able to sink that 5 mana in. Is everything making sense so far for everybody? All right. Next card, pretty simplistic. Sensei's Divining Top. When combined with other cards that I will get to later, I think most of you already know what I'm alluding to. It becomes an incredibly good top deck manipulator, and it allows you to be able to manually change your top deck and be able to shift the cards that you draw. Now, this is really good if you have recurring card draw, say Ristic, Mystic, Esper. But it also has really good trigger ability for other things that I'll get to in a little bit. So I'm going to keep this a little bit vague for now. Okay. Now we have the big 3, 7, 10. We have the big 12. These 12 cards are the most important cards, or one of the most difficult to master and most potent cards in the deck. We have, like I said before, we have card draw triggers. We have opponent cast triggers, and we have then we have we still have opponent cast triggers right here, but then we have self non-creature cast triggers. So let's begin with the draw triggers. These ones are pretty mutually exclusive to these others, so these are all going to be put in the same glut. Fairy Mastermind, we talked about this pretty before. Basically, when an opponent draws their second card, you draw a card. Pretty simple. You can't really predict this, and you can't really force this, unfortunately. But it is something that you can play around because you can kind of stack it. You can like respond to it by mystical tutoring or enlightened tutoring, or some other kind of way to shift your top deck. So that way you can guaranteed get a brick. And it's also great because with Elsha, you can actually respond to the Fairy Mastermind and keep casting until you find a land, then let Fairy Mastermind resolve, draw the land, and hopefully get another piece of fuel going. It's quite nice. Not that powerful, but it allows you to, but it does have some playability. Smothering Tide does not really do anything with Elsha in the form of casting. However, it is incredibly important because it is what I consider to be the best engine in Elsha, and I think many people here do. It provides you so much mana because if everybody's doing Heuristic Study, well, you're making too much mana, and it is incredibly powerful. And it allows you to keep digging with Elsha by keep casting. Does anybody have any questions about any of those cards before I begin the big glut? Because this is going to require a lot of discussion. All right. So, the last three cards that we can somewhat play around, or sorry, the last three cards that we can somewhat play around, are the big three that a lot of people play: Heuristic Study, Mystic Remora, and Esper Sentinel. We very much love these cards. Any deck does that plays them. You know, you draw a card, you have more cards in your hand, and you now have more cards to play during your turn or during a flash step. They are strictly better when Elsha is out. The reason is because if the top deck of our card is a brick, we draw them off of Heuristic Study, and now we have another card to play with Elsha. And when our opponents are casting spells, they are inherently helping us clear our top deck without us having to do anything other than, a 1 or a 3 mana investment. And it allows us to save our mana to be able to actually cast the spells instead of, spending mana into Sensei's Divining Top or other things, So these are incredibly important, and they just get strictly better. I'll put these over here because this will become very, very interesting later in the time. Now, we'll get to the other two opponent cast spells. These, as you all know, Power Balance and Counterbalance, combine perfectly with Sensei's Divining Top. They both have a very, very different way of playing. You have Counterbalance, which basically stops your opponents and causes tempo plays and counters your opponent's spells. This one is a little bit less playable or abusable, unlike Power Balance, because you have to have the same mana cost card on top of your deck, and it only counters. It doesn't move it. It doesn't do anything else. You need another card like Sensei's Divining Top or a draw trigger in order to be able to keep the top deck moving. However, having a card draw effect like Heuristic Study and Counterbalance is where the fun starts beginning. Because, say an opponent casts a Intuition. If you don't have an Elsha on the field, well, how are you going to stack these two? Are you going to stack it so that way you reveal the top card of your library, and then if it fails, force them to pay 1? Or are you going to force them to pay the 1 and then potentially reveal? This is where the entire world of thinking goes into play. And this is actually what makes Elsha so much nicer to use. Because if you know what's on top of your library, you can actually kind of manipulate where the Heuristic Study goes around the Counterbalance trigger. You can make it so that way, if you know the top of your library is a 3-drop, you can force it to Counterbalance and then basically say, hey, you just got countered. Do you still want to pay the additional mana to force me to have to keep the 3-drop on top of my library? And thus, now every time they cast any other mana, any other spell, it now basically taxes them by an additional mana. Because once they let me draw an additional, that 1 3-drop, they now no longer have any idea what's on top of my library. It's really, really nice. Now, an additional mind game to that is that if you have the 3-drop on top, you could actually put the Heuristic Study on top of your library. And some people can see this as they don't have a 3-drop on top of their library, so most of them will actually be inclined to pay the 1 and allow you, and then kind of like force it so that way they can be a little bit more confident. But haha, you caught them in a trap. They now paid 4 mana for a 3-drop spell, and they just got countered anyway. It becomes a fun little mind game of how can you like kind of trap your opponent into paying more mana and use all of their resources and still be able to counter them. It's so fun. And even without Elsha, it's still really, really nice. Now, graveyard. Now, that's basically everything about counterbalance. It's all the mind games and all that stuff. Let's talk about power balance. Power balance is incredibly fun as well. It has the same base effect as counterbalance, but instead, power balance lets us cast the frickin' card instead. Now, this inherently is incredibly useful, because unlike counterbalance where the card stays on top, power balance when the trigger is successful and we cast the card automatically shifts what our top deck is. So that way, if an opponent has a 3-drop and we cast a 3-drop, now nobody, unless we have Elsha out, now nobody knows what is on top of our deck. Well, unless we have other things that are happening, but I'll get to that in a little bit. And every time we cast a spell, we are also, for free, gaining advantage and gaining tempo. Because if someone casts a Kinnan and we present an Arcane Signet off the top of our library, well, we now just got a free mana rock off of it. And no one was expecting it, and no one really was thinking that we would get more mana. And now we have an additional mana to do whatever we want with. And another thing to note, think of it like this. Power Balance is is an increasing returns kind of card. I think that's the correct way to phrase it, but y'all will understand when I say it. You are sinking 2 mana into Power Balance. And if you were able to freely cast a 2-drop at least from one trigger, you have made your mana back. Which means every single spell you get to free cast off of Power Balance's trigger, you are just gaining free mana. And you are just increasing your advantage by large amounts. Because I've had a game where I was able to Power Balance, and then someone cast a 3-drop, and I was actually able to Power Balance a free Vivi or an ETA. And I immediately made my mana back. And then I started creating a ton more mana because Vivi triggers. We'll get to that. And it allows you to also run with the Ristic Study kind of, Ristic Study or card draw effect as well. Because if you know what the top deck of your library is, you can do the same exact mind games as Counterbalance. However, just please note that it has kind of a less of a Power Balance does not have the same threat factor as Counterbalance. Because with Counterbalance, if they play incorrectly, they're going to get countered no matter what they do. Whereas with Power Balance, you just cast a spell in response. And don't forget, by the way, this Power Balance does ignore timing restrictions, so you can cast a Vivi at instant speed. However, here's the fun part. What if you have both counter and Power Balance on the field? This is where things get a little bit stupid and a little bit fun. Now, as you guys know, you get counter and cast. Going back to the same thing. 3-drop on the top of your library. How would you order... This is a question for you guys. How would you order a Power Balance and Counterbalance triggers on the stack in response to a spell?
You're always going to want Counterbalance to resolve first. Most of the time, I would say. I can't think of a time you don't want it to. That way you get both the resolution of the counter and get to cast a spell for free. Because if you do it the other way, you don't know what you're going into. Right? So you'll get your Power Balance trigger, you'll play it, but then the next card might not be the same CNC, so you won't get the counter necessarily. So maximum value is just always going to be
fantastic.
And then Power Balance.
Exactly correct. You're exactly correct. Because Counterbalance does not shift the top card of your deck, it allows the 3-drop to counter your opponent's 3-drop, and then Power Balance still remembers the converted mana cost of the cast spell. The spell does not need to be on the stack when Power Balance resolves. So it allows you to reveal the 3-drop with Counterbalance, counter the spell, so it goes into the graveyard, and then Power Balance casts the spell that you revealed off the top of your library. most of the time, into an empty stack. And it allows you to just cast it for free. And then it allows you to clear your top deck, so that way nobody knows what's on top of your library for counterbalance triggers. And it's kind of become a fun little loop of you counter, you cast, now nobody knows what's going to be countered. It becomes this fun little cycle. And it's really, really powerful. Now, here comes my next question. What happens if we add a card draw effect like Ristic Study into the mix? Well, it becomes a very interesting mind game and a fun game of cat and mouse, basically. Because you're kind of playing the same mind game as you had with counterbalance or power balance. You have 3 places you can put it. Right in front of counterbalance, in between the 2 balances, or at the end of power balance. And it becomes a lot more fun because Ristic Study on front can show signs of weakness. It shows, hey, we don't have that 3-drop on the top of our library. And it kind of pokes them to want to pay the 1. If you then have Ristic Study in the middle, it can actually show a few things. 1, it can show that you do have something for counterbalance, but you maybe not want to cast it with power balance. Maybe you want to draw it. This is actually the worst spot for Ristic Study, in my opinion. Or sorry, the second. No, it is the worst spot in my opinion because it shows that you have a counterbalance, but it doesn't mentally force them to highly consider paying the 1. Because if their spell is countered, why would they pay the 1 to let you draw the card? Why would they do that? They know it's on top of your library, so why are they going to do that? And then, of course, you inevitably cast it. Oh, wait, no, never mind. I'd like to take it back. It actually it still makes it an interesting use case for if they would pay the 1 for now, because you counter their spell, but now do they not want to pay the 1 to force you to draw it? This is actually more special. This is actually more interesting with Esper Sentinel. Because if you put it in between, you can counter their spell, and then they can choose to pay the 1. They can choose to not pay the 1, force you to draw the card, and now you don't know what's on top of your library with power balance. This is a little bit more chaotic, but allows you to have some interesting things. This one, not so much because it's a May. I completely forgot about that, so that is my bad. However, if you put Ristic Study at the end, now everything is going on true random, and now this just becomes a Ristic Study trigger. It does not have any effect on counterbalance and power balance. Because you're countering their spell with counterbalance, you're then casting the spell you revealed off of counterbalance, and then you're just drawing a new completely random card. And no one knows what it is, except for you if you have Elsha out. This is where things get a lot more fun. Now, another way that you can go about this as well is you can actually do some politics with this. Where you can basically talk to your opponent who's casting a spell. Say they're casting a spell that you do want to resolve, but you have a 1-drop. This is where Ristic Study would come into play, right here or right here. Because you can basically tell them, hey, I'm not going to choose to reveal off of counterbalance. But you still reveal off of power balance. Or you can always just force them to be like, hey, I want to cast this spell on top of my library, as long as you don't pay the 1 or something. And if they're kind of rude and lying, well, you let the counterbalance not reveal. But if they pay the 1, and your power balance, well, if they pay the 1, you still get the cast. But if they don't pay the 1, you still get the cast. It's a nice little double entendre of no matter what, you're getting the power balance trigger, even if you're trying to be nice with the counterbalance. Any questions about how these two interact with each other? Fantastic. Okay. And that, oh yeah, and also I already talked about the Sensei's Divining Top stuff. All right. So we've talked about all the pretty simplistic trigger stacking, mainly because that is all the parasitic and personally activated or personally triggered abilities, where we don't really have a direct way to force the triggers. The final stack where we're going to talk about are all the self-triggered upon cast abilities. This is where things get a little bit ridiculous. Now give me 20 seconds. I need to turn on a light because the sunlight is now setting. Give me 2 seconds. All right, I'm back. So, where were we? Oh, right. The non-creature casts. So, this is the part where things get very, very complicated. We have these 5 cards right here. We have Dragon's Rage Chandler, Burning Prophet, and Artist's Talent. Oh, and Displacer Kitten, and then off to the side is Vivi. Vivi is probably the easiest trigger out of every single one, because just like Blind Obedience, all it does is damage every opponent and then make Vivi grow bigger. And then if it's during your turn, that makes Vivi become a mana machine. So exactly like Burgi, you would want Vivi to be always at the top of the stack and resolve first. So that way because it doesn't really have an effect on how the rest of the deck performs. It's just damage and grow for more mana, just exactly like Burgi. So we can ignore that. These 4 cards are where things get a little bit difficult. And let's go through them one by one. This Dragon's Rage Chandler. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Surveil 1. Burning Prophet. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Scry 1. Artist's Talent. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And then Displacer Kitten. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, flicker target non-land permanent you control. These 4 cards are, in my opinion, the best micro engines in our deck. When combined, they can make you have some ridiculous amounts of value. Because whenever you cast anything, you get so many triggers. And that is where you need to start figuring out, okay, how do I use these triggers to my advantage? And how can I stack them correctly such that everything will be fine? I'm just going to grab a few cards just as a demonstration. And then, all right. So, first off, we have 3 different card advantage effects, or card velocity effects. Dragon's Rage Chandler, Darcy's Scry, Prophet's Scry, Darcy's Surveil, Prophet's Scry, and Artist's Rummage effect. Each of them manipulate the top deck in a different way. And that will cause a very, very different way that we interpret them depending on the stack. Because if we don't know what's on top of our library, whenever we cast a spell, well, we have 3 triggers that we always want to look at. And almost always, we want Artist's Talent to be the last one to resolve. Because Artist's Talent actually gives us the card, while the other 2 are information. Now, I have a question for y'all. But before I explain it, which trigger between Burning Prophet and Dragon's Rage Chandler would you put to be resolved first? The Scry or the Surveil? Surveil? Interesting. So you would always put the Surveil first. Abstract. That is not an incorrect answer. The answer is depends on what the top deck is. And if you don't know what your top deck is, it doesn't matter. However, in general cases, and in most cases of not knowing what your top deck is, well, the answer is Surveil. The reason why it is always Surveil first when you don't know what your top deck is because it allows you to fuel your graveyard and allows you to be able to update everything you do before you have a Scry. Now, for example, in something like this, Lion's Eye Diamond, always ship that to the graveyard. You always want that. So that would get rid of that. And this, yeah, you always want to scry this to the graveyard. You would scry this to the bottom of the library. Yes, you would rather surveil it to the graveyard, but it still is another brick. And if Burning Prophet happened to reveal a Mox Amber, you did not lose putting the graveyard effect of Darcy, and it actually allows you to then and then it allows you to be able to run Artist Talent's Rummage trigger and be able to draw the card. Now, if you do know the top deck of your library, though, if you have Elsha out, now this comes very interesting because now you have all three effects and you see a card that you could cast. So, if it's an instant, do you want to save it? Or do you want to put it into your graveyard? Or do you want to keep your deck full? Those are usually the way you want to go about it. Now, for something like an Orm's Chant, if I have already cast a Silence, you best believe I'm putting that thing right into the graveyard with Dragon's Rage Channeler. I don't need it. However, if I have not cast a Silence and this effect, and I don't think I'm going to win this turn, I would actually want to Artist's Talent first, so that way I can get the Orm's Chant into my hand. So that way I can then proceed to keep digging for more velocity with my other two effects. Put that into that, and then Dragon's Rage Channeler, as always have Surveillable for Scry, put that into the graveyard, and then, oh, there's a Fierce Guardianship with an Elsha on the field. We can just ignore the Scry and keep it on top. And there you go. You were able to go through 3 cards, and now you have 2 more castables through all of that. And then if something happens, this resolves, you can then proceed to Mox Amber. Well, now you know the top of your library, and do you want it? Yes? Alright, Artist's Talent. Let's get rid of this Blind Obedience. Oh, wait, now there's a Vexing Bauble? Okay, maybe I do want to cast that as well. Alright, well, this is on that. Now we cast this in response to these 2, and now we have 3 more triggers to deal with. And now we see, oh, there's an Ancient Tomb on the top. Well, then let's put Artist's Talent last, because I don't want to immediately draw it. Let's put the Scry next, and the Surveil next. That way we can immediately bin this. Oh, do we want Brain Freeze in our hand? No, but we kind of want it in our deck, so let's put it into the bottom of our library. And then do we want to rummage the Imposter Mech? Well, I mean, we could, but what we could also do is, since we have a Dragon's Rage Channeler effect on the stack still, we could ignore the Artist's Talent, or we could rummage, put this Imposter Mech in the field, then we could do our Surveillance Scry afterwards. And this is where things start to get a little bit complicated. And this is the main focus of this entire conversation. How, with all the triggers, every single spell you cast, especially the top deck of your knowledge, will change how you stack your triggers. And it will constantly depend of, do I want this card in my hand? Do I want to cast it now and save my triggers for the next top deck? Or do I want to put this into my graveyard? Because I know some people do not play Burning Prophet. They just play Dragon's Rage Channeler and Artist's Talent, and that's perfectly fine. So in this case, I probably would want Imposter Mech because it gives me more mana potentially, and I can cast it another time. So I would get rid of Chain of Vapor. And then this goes here. Now I have a Flusterstorm. Vexing Bauble resolves. Well, I already have a Fierce Guardianship, and I have a mana with Mox Amber to crack Vexing Bauble, so I don't really need Flusterstorm. Put that in the graveyard. Windswept Heath, that goes into the graveyard with that. Burning Prophet goes away. Mox Amber, oh look, and now we have Claim the Firstborn. Well, now we can just do some other stuff. Now we've claimed the Firstborn, and now we go all over again. And in this case, we're going to be casting the Enlightened Tutor before any of these triggers resolve. So that's where this comes into play. And since we're probably going to be casting the top of our deck with the second thing, we kind of want to pre-set up everything. And in this case, if we know we are casting 2 spells in front, I would always put Burning Prophet first. Because since we're starting to slowly fill our graveyard more, we want to actually kind of keep our deck a little bit more full than we want to. This starts where this now actually goes into the mindset of kind of being cognizant of how many cards you have in your library, so that way you can kind of switch between Breach combo and top combo on a dime. The reason I say this is because both of them use one or different fields. You need to have enough cards in your graveyard to be able to go off with Breach, but you still need to have a decent amount of cards in your library, such that when you do top combo, you can still have enough Storm to win and then not deck out. Normally, for me, that's around 50. 50 cards is when I try to kind of like change my mindset to be a little bit more focused on using Burning Prophet to keep my deck filled. But if you don't have Burning Prophet, you don't give 2 shits. You're just using Darcy and Artist's Talent as you care for. So in this case, I just pretend I have the mana. I'm just going to keep going. I would then run Enlightened Tutor. I would then I would then make more of these. Oh, I guess that and that. Oh, I see a Rite of Flame. Well, I can just well, I guess I can just do that, and that. Let me just hold on. Give me a quick second. I'm just gonna put all of these into exile so I have more space. And well, would you look at that? With the we have Rite of Flame on top. Well, I mean, no matter what we're doing, we might as well just cast it because it's just free mana. Well, that just starts triggering another set. Ooh, that just starts triggering another set of 3 triggers. And now you have Teferi. But look, you now have 6. You now have 9 potential card velocity triggers on the stack. At this point, it's going to become incredibly hard for you to lose. As the biggest bottleneck at this point, because this is now true manual storm mode. You now the biggest limiting factor you have now is mana. Because, oh my gosh, look at this. You have, just ignore these. You now have basically this kind of board state with some mana. You don't have a reducer, but you have Elsha, you have Enlightened Tutor, so a way to get a reducer. You have Rite of Flame, so you're actually 1 mana off from being able to get Artist Talents up to level 3. So where are you going to get that? Well, Claim the First one probably will get you, probably was targeting a Kinnan or something. So the best way would be to, well, would you want to feel your graveyard more? So that way you can have a backup of, breach line. Or would you rather go full all in on the top line and then maybe flash in Teferi in response to everything? And now, this also gets the part of, with all these stacking triggers, knowing when to stop. Because, as you see now, I have cast way more than 3 spells. And if I'm basically trying to be as productive on the top of my deck, or get as much value off the top of my deck, I can become very, very susceptible to Mindbreak traps. Because think of it like this. I mean, look at this right here. I have a Claim the Firstborn, an Enlightened Tutor, and a Rite of Flame. If someone Mindbreak traps that, I am very much almost out of the game. Oh, or not out of the game. I am very much stopped this turn. And if they were to counter only one of these 3 spells, I can still keep going. But a Mindbreak trap just completely stops us. And it kind of forces us to stop and pass on the next turn. Now, I know there's a Vexing Bauble, but still, just keep mind of it. And all of that. Is all of this making sense? Yeah? Perfect. Alright. So, next, off of all that, you would have to focus on letting your things resolve. And another thing to note, by the way, is knowing when to just let everything resolve. Because once you get that resolved, you get your 2 red. And if you have a Teferi, or say you have an Into the Floodmaw, or even some kind of fancy reactive spell. Yeah, let's just keep Into the Floodmaw. Knowing when to keep that on top of your deck and not draw it because you have a good rest of your hand is pivotal, so that way you can be ignoring you have a tutor. You can always have that to restart your chain further down the line. Now, if we add Displacer Kit into this entire bloody thing, things get a lot more complicated. Let's ignore this one for now, and let's just stick with these 3 that I know most people have in their libraries. So, these 3 are very, very fun because let's get Talisman of Progress out of here. Let's get a Talisman. Let's get a Vault out as well. Just some stuff. Oh my god! Or you could just accidentally just nuts the win as usual. Yeah, those things that does happen. And then, if someone tries... Actually, let's talk about this, because this can actually get quite funny. The more you manually dig, the more likely you are to just accidentally win. Because it just happens. You're just going to randomly just nuts into it, and that's how it do. For example, in this location, if you're manually storming and you find Tezzeret, I mean, alright, just... There's Sensei's Divining Top. And then you can just... And since this transmute artifact is on the top of your library, you can actually have this as a gotcha, because if someone tries to respond to your activation, well, there's a surprise transmute artifact on top of your library. Obviously, get rid of that. You scry this to the bottom, and now you can. Sorry, you'd surveil that, but there you go. You now have a potential One Ring as backup, because if both of these get stopped, well, you can now, because trigger, flicker, and then now, okay, well, this is all gonna go wrong. Well, I mean, let's just do that, One Ring. Now we have a lot of other ways to go. Actually, this actually makes it a lot nicer, because Displacer Kitten becomes a very, very interesting, where is it? Library. Where did I put it? Is it in the graveyard? No. Teifer. Where did I put Codex Shredder? Oh, I put it in the library. Whoopsies. Because Displacer Kitten allows you to have multiple different really interesting ways to generate more advantage. Displacer Kitten with Codex Shredder becomes another top deck manipulator and card velocity. Displacer Kitten with a One Ring becomes another card advantage engine, which becomes strictly better than Artist Talent and Dragon's Rage Channeler. Displacer Kitten with any mana just helps you offset the cost of constantly casting and constantly manually storming. As always, Kitten does whatever the hell you want, and it is incredibly powerful. And that kind of also dictates where Kitten goes on the stack. Because say if you spend this mana and then you cast this into the Flood Maw, well, now you have 3 triggers and you have a Time Twister on the stack. So here's the question. Let's just pretend I just do that, and let's just put that in the bottom library. So say now you have these 3 triggers and you have this hand and you have a Time Twister. Well, how would you want to put it? Would you want to find a way to put this into your hands with this? Let's put this into exile. Would you want to draw this with Displacer Kitten? Or would you want to rummage it with Displacer Kitten and then see if you can draw something better afterwards? Or would you want to, since you're more tapped out and you only have 1 free cost later, would you rather untap the Mana Rock and then keep this top deck filler out of the way and then keep digging? There's a lot of different ways to use Displacer Kitten, and it really depends on what spell and what kind of board state you are in. Now, in this current focus right now, the focus would be to actually make more mana, because obviously you're kind of out of mana. You're a Mox Amber away. So you would actually have it, so that way Kitten would flicker mana. And in this case, since you're flickering mana, you want it to resolve first. And then since you want to draw the card, you want Artist Talent to resolve second, and then just Dragon's Rage Channeler to resolve last. So Displacer Kitten targeting Mana Vault, flicker that goes away. Artist Talent, you would get rid of a lands, you would get rid of that, and then Dragon's Rage Channeler, just get rid of whatever the heck you want. Jeska's Will, interesting. Well, you can then proceed to cast a Mox Amber from your hands, and now you have your 3 triggers again. Do you want to cast Jeska's Will? Do you want to cast Jeska's Will in between these 3 triggers? Or do you want to put it into your hand, then cast it, then do Time Twister stuff? This is where all the fun shenanigans begin. In this case, I would always have Dragon's Rage Channeler last, and I would have like this and like this. And I would actually prefer to have Displacer Kitten target the Talisman of Progress. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it flicker, and then in response to these 2, I'm going to... Actually, no, I would do the Talisman of Creativity, because because I still have a Rainbow Land. Allows me to do this, hold up 1 mana, and respond to these 2 triggers with more mana. And it allows me to have another subset of 3 triggers that I need to figure out with. Do you really want to draw off of the Mental Mist? Do you really want to draw the Mental Misstep to protect your Time Twister? I would say yes. So at this point, I would do the exact same setup. In this case, since I don't know what I'm going to be drawing though, Dragon's Rage Chandler go above Artist Talent, and Displacer Kitten targeting the One Ring. And then in response to the one Displacer Kitten trigger, I would draw the card with the One Ring, drawing the Mental Misstep, and then flicker the One Ring. And then Darcy, well, now we kind of accidentally just drew into the win, but like, whatever. Actually, it's not even possible to do the win right now, which is unfortunate because we are 1 blue away. Which we can actually do right now. So we would actually respond. We could either. So this actually lets us to do one of 2 different ways. And this is something I'm actually going to ask you guys. Which way would be the best way to go about this stack? Because what you can do is we can Mental Misstep our into the Flood Mot, respond, flicker Talisman of Progress to make the 2nd blue mana, and then win with Displacer Kitten, top, and just everything else. Or we could let Jeska's Will with both modes resolve, have a Sorcery Speed Transmute artifact on the field, and then have more draws and have a Mental Misstep, and then hopefully see what else we get. Which way would you guys think the best way to do is? An Instant Speed Transmute or a Sorcery Speed Transmute, but with 2 extra cards from Jeska's Will, and then more mana, more red mana, and more mana to play with in general. I'm not really seeing any typing, so I'm just going to assume that you guys don't really know. Which is fine. But for this case, it honestly depends on how you feel and how you think. In this case, if you're trying to be a little bit more protective, and you want to be like a little bit more conservative with what you're doing, the correct answer in that case is to let the Jeska's Will resolve, so that way you can cash in the value from it and not get blown out by a Mindbreak Trap, or in this case, a Flusterstorm as well. It allows you to be a little bit more protected, and yes, it does sacrifice the Instant Speed Transmute artifact, but it still allows you to do what you need. And in this case, you would let the Dragon's Rage Chandler trigger go away. You would then proceed to get rid of. You would then rummage it into your hand, and then Jeska's Will would resolve, making you 6 mana, and then you have Savine's Wreck, Swan Song, and Mindbreak Trap. And now you have an incredibly protected Transmute artifact with 3 pieces of counter magic. And even if it all fails, you still have a Time Twister. Oh yeah, don't forget you also have Helm of Awakening, just randomly. This is incredibly powerful. Artist Talents, for Brain Freeze, sure, we can do that. And then Dragon's Rage Chandler getting rid of this. And look at that. You now have just from those 2 spells, from knowing how to do it correctly. Personally, my more conservative, the other way was also correct. But since we played it a little bit more conservatively, we now have 6 mana, 1 colorless mana, and 2 blue mana. And into the Flood Mod that resolved. But we now have 3 pieces of interaction, a way to get Sensitive Divining Top, a way to get Underworld Breach, 2 reducers, and actually no, 3 reducers with Helm of Awakening, which we could actually just no, we don't want to do that just yet, and just an insane amount of redundancy with just casting those 3 spells, because we went through what, 9 cards. This is how all those triggers constantly being changed can have drastic results on how you order them. Any questions about any of this? You good on this topic? All right. Okay. just eating and listening, that's fair. I have, unfortunately, enough energy to probably do one more topic. Because, yeah, this is talking all this time is a lot. So, we're definitely going to be doing another session for advanced Elsha topics and theory another time. But I want you guys, give me a choice between one of these. Or, give me something that isn't on here. You want to go for timing? All right. Abstract, do you have one you want to go for as either? Sequencing. Ooh, that's interesting. Okay. This spell and sequencing kind of merged into the thing we just talked about with stacking triggers. However, that is definitely going to be a long one, and I'm hoping to be able to finish this in the next 45 minutes. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put this as the top topic for the next session, because this one will take a while, and I understand why you want it, because this one is incredibly useful to talk about. So, but the value of patience and when to respond, I can definitely talk about without destroying my throat. So unfortunately, we're gonna be doing this one. The value of patience and when to respond. So, as you all have kind of seen throughout the entire time, we have definitely done a lot of talking about the stack, triggering the stack, or using the stack and altering the triggers and all that stuff. The biggest thing that, especially in an Elsha deck, that you need to know is when to start casting. The differences between an Elsha deck and a lot of other decks is that since we innately have Flash in the top of our library, we should not be like other Teamer decks and other, Grixis decks, where they just play all their sorceries and they just get all the value to become the big threat and then pass the turn. Or, they kind of like just do all the they tap out to value out every like X thing. Like they play a Timna, then then like a Lotho, and then just pass the turn or something like that. With Elsha outs, we can play our spells off the top of our deck exactly like our opponents. And that basically means we now have to play the mana game, as well as the timing game. At what point is it best to cast the spell on the top of our deck? Now, unfortunately, the biggest answer to that is it depends, because it always does. But for most of the time, this is actually going to kind of like tie into this one, as well as this one, as well as this one, and somewhat of this one. It kind of pulls a little bit from all four of these, but in general, knowing the window to go off and knowing the window to safely cast spells is hypercritical, because we are such a spell-focused deck. We are not as spell-focused as Ral, because they are so focused on having their spells resolve. They need their spells to resolve in order to get their value. And they need to keep casting spells on the same turn, because they're a deck that is focused on rituals. Whereas Elsha is a deck that is more focused on mana rocks. And being able to not have to go off all on one turn. Ooh. And being... We're good. Something just dropped. And being able to go off, or in being able to constantly cast spells during other turns and not be reliant on using that storm to win is very, very useful, because it allows us to hold off on casting those spells until the last possible moment. Say, for example, you just cast Elsha, and on the top of your deck you see a Mox Opal. Well, that's quite nice, but would you cast it now during your main phase? Or would you wait to cast it during the opponent before you's end step? So that way no one knows what's on top of your library, and you can just surprise develop at least additional mana, and now you're untapping with 6 mana instead of just 5. Very interesting. Now, that kind of thought process has to come from, well, what's in your hand, and how much mana else do you have to work with, and how, like, and this part gets into a little bit of the gamble. What do you think your next top deck is going to be? And how deep do you think you can go? Now, obviously, during the starting few turns, you're not going to go deep. You're probably going to get like 1, maybe 2 cards, heck, maybe 3. But once you start getting more micro engines, i.e. Burning Prophet, Dragon's Rage Channeler, and Artist's Talent, you can start digging 2 cards, 3 cards, 4 cards for every time you cast a spell. And that's when things start to get really ridiculous. And the more ridiculous spells, the more ridiculous the stack gets, the scarier you become. So, if you cast Elsha after you cast a Dragon's Rage Channeler and immediately start storming, they're just going to immediately try to kill your Elsha, because she's the big threat factor. So, knowing that as long as you don't have cards in your hand that you need to cast now, you can hold off on having that mana. Because if people think that you don't have mana, they are more likely willing to try to go off and win on that turn. And say you have, Mox Amber on top of your library and a Swan Song in hand, oh boy, you can surprise them with another counter spell that they were not expecting. Because they're only expecting people to have, Fierce, Force of Will, Force of Negation, and Mindbreak Trap. And usually those are like the only 4, or Flare of Denial from other decks. So being able to surprise them with an additional counterspell that they were not expecting is incredibly powerful. And heck, that still draws you 1 card deeper. And you never know. Casting that Mox Opal now might reveal to you a Soul Ring, and after that might reveal you an Arcane Signet. And then after that Arcane Signet, you might find an Enlightened Tutor. Well, good golly gee. You can now Enlightened Tutor, untap, and then during your upkeep before you draw Smothering Tithe, which is probably what you'd get, cast Smothering Tithe with all that mana you just cast last turn, and now you have 5 mana, 4 extra tap mana, and a Smothering Tithe, and you just got 7 cards deeper in your library. The velocity is massive at that point, and very much your Elsha would have been killed if you did this all during your main phase. But knowing that you at least got a couple of spells off the top of your library before your next draw step, even if Elsha gets killed, you have an additional 4 mana and however much absurd amounts of mana you have from a Smothering Tithe at that point. It helps start that snowball an insane amount. And that snowball only gets bigger when you have your micro engines to help keep your bricks off the top of your deck. Now, that's kind of how you can better snowball with Elsha. Knowing when to also cast your counter spells when people are trying to win is also a very, very important part to talk about. Okay. When you are facing a Rog side deck, what are the most important spells that must be countered? Too many? Yeah, honestly, too many. I'm just gonna name a few of them because they are very important. I would like to also note that I have not played against Rogsai in a while, so my information could be old, but they're still relevant targets. Intuition, Necropotence, Dark Ritual, Goblin Welder, if they play Bolas' Citadel anymore, Underworld Breach, and those are like the biggest things that I can think of right now. So, all of those are very, very interesting cards and very, very relevant cards to cast. Well, why would you, like if you... How do I word this? Knowing what spells to counter and when is something that you kind of have to play more and more games, in order to be able to effectively understand what the correct play is. That's just unfortunately just a reps thing. And you need more. I don't remember the correct way to word this. I'm sorry. But yeah, you need reps in order to understand when the correct is. But say you only have a mental misstep and someone's doing a dark writ. Well, if you're a Rogsai deck, they're probably casting Necropotence. Counter that thing. And that kind of gets into the board state analysis versus resource analysis thing as well. Knowing and seeing how much mana that a Rogsai player has and how many cards they have at their disposal is really key at knowing, hey, do I counter this Dark Ritual, or do I counter what could be a Vampiric Tutor in the future? Try to tempo instead of control. Yep, that's exact. Yep, I agree with that. If you have the ability to tempo, that is fantastic. Because remember, Elsha, unfortunately, always needs 3 turns of setup in order to fully unlock the power. So, if you can delay a Rogsai player by a single turn, that can sometimes get you from turn 2 to turn 3, which is more development, so that way you have more mana to help interact. Or that brings you from turn 3 to turn 4, and now you're in the game to threaten the win. And if you're in the game to threaten the win, that's when you can just win over them, and you don't care as much about them trying to win. And that's where the fun part comes in. And this is where you need to learn how to start tempoing and when to respond to people. So that way, yes, you're not taking them out of the game completely, but you're just delaying them. And delaying is what we want. The longer the game goes, the better Elsha gets. And I mean, yes, taking them out of the game is pretty good because, we don't have to worry about them and we don't have to worry about 2 other decks. But sometimes that's just not an option. Patience and when to respond. Let's see, what's another... I feel like I'm missing something about the when to respond part that I can't remember right now. If either of you, I'm going to start doing some brainstorming, but if either of you can kind of think of a section to this question. Now, if you can kick the turbo player, do it. Thinking about it more, probably yes. The biggest reason that I still have the mindset of you want to keep the turbo player in is because of threat assessment. And that kind of gets into the information game. Because if you can keep the turbo player as a decent threat, you can still be able to run politics around and be like, hey, yes, I was able to stop this person, but I was only able to stop them temporarily. We still need to focus on them to stop them completely. And that, thus, takes the threat away from us and allows us to buy more time to be able to build up and then play and then get to our foundation turn, get our foundation turns over, and then be able to finally fight. And then, yeah. At least that's the mindset that I deal with. I know some people very much prefer to have a player out of the game. Fundamentally, I do not believe that is correct. However, that is subject to opinion. That is not subject to research or policy. I believe that having 4 people to constantly have the threat change around is what Elsha wants best. Now, obviously, it needs to be a relatively balanced 4-seater. You can't have it be like, oh, this person tried to win, now let's stop. Now this person's trying to win, and no one stopped them. Oh, shoot, now we have to finally, and we have to expend all our resources. Now the third person can basically just win for free kind of thing. You have to have it so that way everyone can politic each other, and everyone can kind of control each other's attempt to win. And then that's the place where, as long as you are adept at it, and talking, and being able to be, you know, a ambassador or someone who can be able to at least talk and make good deals while not screwing your opponent over and not be deceiving, Elsha will benefit all the time. And in most cases, Elsha will just win. It's how it is. An equal board is the best playground for Elsha. I think that's really all I could think about for that line. Which is actually, yeah. Now, does anyone have any other questions? No. Yeah, that's my playstyle and build deck. Keep everyone in check, fighting from behind, and sprint through for a win. Not even just sprint, just surprise rocket blast through everybody, and then win. Yeah. Alright, so it has now been 2.5 hours of me just straight yapping. Does anyone else have any other things that they want to ask about any of the things that we talked about? Because we went through half of these. Is there anything else that you want to ask, talk, or mention about these 5 points? I'm good. You take a break and drink some water. Yeah, that's fair. All right. Then in that case, I'm going to stop the recording.